Hello, welcome to Competitive Paupercast, episode 6. Today's topic, of course, is the bannings of Temporal Fissure and Cloudpost.
Yes!
With me, as you can hear, is the overexcited Viking, Dan,
Hi, guys.
and special guest host, Dave, writer for MTGO Academy.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Dave, thanks for coming on the show, being with us on such short notice.
Yeah, I'm glad you invited me.
Yeah. And I'd like to do a special shout out to you too, because we are doing the Battle for Charity for Child's Play. And for all our listeners out here who didn't hear us last week, big shout out to Dave here for donating straight up $150.
Awesome.
As far as I know, you're the largest donation that we have, and probably it's going to stay that way.
Well, actually, I think from MTGO Traders just dropped, I think 200 for it, which is awesome.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Big shout out for MTGO Traders then.
Yeah, I think we've already blown past our goal of 500.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
No help from me because, Jesus, I cannot win a daily event to save my life. So my losing streak in Pauper continues. I think I'm going on 12 dailies in a row now that I've dropped.
Oh,
So,
That's
Yeah.
pretty bad.
yeah, it's a pretty rough thing here. Surprisingly enough, I never actually lost to Fissure until the most recent daily I played, where I was playing Delver, and man, I had the nuts draw, and there was just nothing I could do to stop him. So
those days are over.
yeah, those days are over, and it was so frustrating because I've never had a problem playing against Fissure before as a Delver player, and it's like this guy just had it all, and
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
it's like I literally had the nut draw too. It was like turn 1 or turn 2 flip Delver, turn Cloud of Fairies into Spell Stutter into Ninja, and there was
Wow.
he just beat me. He just fissured me. And I was like, how did you know? Like, he fissured me, and then the next turn he played Pneumatic Wall to get his fissure back, and he had the fissure lock. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. He was at like 2 life. But yeah, so he had the perfect combination
Sounds
of
like a
cards, and,
terrible
it
day,
was
man.
It was super frustrating too. That was I was 2-2 in that daily too when that happened. Or I was 2-1 in that daily. So that was the finals, and it was really, really frustrating.
Dave, I got to thank you for another thing. You written that amazing article, the Introduction to Competitive Pauper, with
Thank
all
you.
the words in it. And now it's obsolete. Will there be a version 3?
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of joking about it because when I wrote the first edition of that on Pure MTGO, it was like right before they banned Grape Shot and Invigorate, and it seemed like it was inevitable that when I wrote the second edition, shortly after that, they were going to bust out the bans for something there. So yeah, you will see a third edition, but like last time, it'll probably be about a year because it doesn't seem worthwhile to do it right away.
No, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Say a lot of what you said in that article still applies too. It's just we're gonna have a new flux of decks with the banning of
Yeah,
Temporal Fissure.
the prices will be obsolete
Cloudpost.
like days after it went up, and the metagame information will be completely screwed over, but that's all right.
Yeah, so the prices are gonna be a little screwy, but as soon as the bannings happen, I immediately sold Cloud of Fairies and Snap because I think those two prices are mostly driven by Fissure. I mean, Cloud of Fairies and Snap were both decently expensive before the Fissure became a thing, but they pretty much doubled in price when Fissure really took over the metagame. So yeah, I sold those high.
Sorry, I expect them to land at around 250 for Snap and 5 for Fairies if Delver continues to be as big as today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of, at least personally, believe that Delver's going to, at least for a little while, be really strong, and Cloud, for that at least, is going to be a big card.
Yeah. Where Delver really loses, though, is that Stompy and Affinity get to come back, and those are both really rough matchups for Delver.
I think Delver will have problems with all the mid-range decks that were sort of totally removed from the metagame.
Yeah. The grindy type
Yeah.
decks. and I was playing against I was playing the tournament practice one last night, and just all kinds of people are brewing all kinds of things. I've never seen so many crazy brews in a night of just playing.
That's always the
games.
best part of Bannings.
Yeah, that would be great.
I saw like Turbo Fog, Teachings Control with like 2 Sprout Storms as the win con.
Oh, I've played that.
Nice.
Yeah. I almost decked him. He was down to like 3 cards before he finally had enough.
It's not very good.
Swarm tokens.
I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, you get a lot of the grindy type control decks that are allowed to play again because Fissure's not there. These kind of decks are really trying to 2-for-1 you into oblivion. Dan, have you been playing anything Pop Gauntlet wise?
Yeah, I've finished round 3 of the Pauper Gauntlet, and we have 11 decks remaining, but one of them might be doomed because of the bannings. Simic Stormpost, I put David on emergency recovery and tried to salvage the deck so it can be played after October the 2nd, but it looks
I think
hard.
I think that deck just is a no-go. You just might as well count that one out of the contention there.
Yep, it looks that way. So then 10 decks remain.
All right. And Dave, you been playing anything Magic-wise?
Well, I just had been I've been writing a lengthy piece on 8-Post, which is now all gone to hell. That was planned to be a 3-part series. That may not happen at this point. So I had been playing a lot of just random 8-Post decks.
Just getting in your fix before it's banned?
Yeah, that's what it's going to have to be now. And, the series was going to be the first article, if anyone's checked it out. It was based on just the monocolored versions of 8-Post. And the next one was going to be all the 2-colored, like the guild posts. But I'm going to, like Dan, run out of time to play around with those decks. So, what are you supposed to do about it?
Yeah, not too much you can do. So one of the things that I've been doing in sort of preparation and like foreseeing the banning of Temporal Fissure is I've been playing a lot of decks that are obsolete currently due to Fissure. Decks like Mono Black Control and Mono Blue Control. Those sort of decks are just, you can't play them right now in the metagame, but I've been testing with them periodically over the past few months, and so I think I'm ready to go into like Muck or MBC daily events because I've learned the decks pretty well and I can squeeze out wins with both of those decks.
Does that mean you're going to go to MBC as soon as the bans come into effect? That's going to be your go-to deck for dailies?
MBC gets a lot better, and I do think people are going to be relying on the old stuff, such as Cyclops and Hexproof, whenever stuff is banned, because people don't know what they're going to. And MBC has excellent matchups against both of those. It has a very, very good Delver matchup, and it can hold its own against Stompy. Stompy's a little bit harder, but I think Stompy's pretty hard for any control deck.
Why would you be playing MBC over Trinket?
Consistency mostly. I mean, I could play Trinket. I know, Dan.
As I've said often before, Trinket is very much MBC version 2. And at one point I was 26-0 against MBC with Trinket. So you play exactly like a mono black control deck, but you draw a lot more cards. So, and that especially helps in the Stompy matchup, which is quite hard for all control decks. Not with the builds people are playing right now in Stompy, but that will change soon with Ledgewalker coming back, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, so we see, with the banning of Temporal Fissure, we see a lot of decks that become playable, but then we also see a lot of decks shifting. So Stompy is going to go back to Silhana Ledgewalkers, I think. Nobody's been playing Silhana Ledgewalkers and Stompy for a few months now, and now the Silhana Ledgewalker all of a sudden becomes good again because you have an interactive metagame.
I really hope that it takes a while for Ledgewalker to come back.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be I know if I enter a daily with Stompy, I'm probably playing a Ledgewalker.
Yeah.
At least one or two in the main deck. Because they are really, really good in creature-based matchups as like an evasive thing that gets in those final few points of damage. Like, let's say against Affinity.
Yes.
Although most Affinity lists are now running Somber Hoverguard, which I can also see that going away. I think Affinity goes back to the nuts and bolts of 20 creatures. What do you think, Dave?
I don't know. I'm considering. I honestly haven't played Affinity much, but I kind of always assumed the Hoverguard was more for a Delver matchup, since they've got so much in the air. Is that not the case?
No, I think that's more for like Stompy, I think, actually. Whenever you're trying to just go over the top and finish them while your 4/4s hold down the ground.
All right. I'd say most of the time I play Affinity, I'm on the other side of it, and I'm getting a Tog thrown at my face.
Yeah. I mean, Affinity lists are pretty much like, 52 cards are set in stone, and then the last 8 or so are just sort of up for grabs, and that's where the Somber Hoverguard usually falls.
Yep.
I don't think the Somber Hoverguard is really necessary, but I'm not a core Affinity player, so I could be wrong on that. I think the Quark Clan Shaman gets much better too.
Definitely.
I've never played the Hoverguard, and I'm always happy when Affinity plays it against me, no matter what deck I'm playing, so I've never seen the charm with it.
Yeah. So yeah, the Quark Clan Shaman becomes really good, especially with the metagame shifting this way, because the Shaman can just reset the board. I was referring to anybody. Can you guys think of any other specific cards that I haven't seen play in a long time that might start seeing play again?
Well, I was just I'm thinking Crypt Rats is definitely going to make a splash again if we see a lot more aggro, as I expect we will.
For sure.
Like the combo version even would be a lot of fun to see that come into a regular competitor slot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crypt Rats and Undying Evil or Unearth are really good combos.
The Songs of the Damned one is definitely my favorite.
And I haven't seen that deck in a long time.
Yeah, I like to point out that there are 3 mid-range decks that have been getting results during the last few months. Not too many results, but there have been 4 O's and 3 1s for Boros Kitty, Azorius Kitty, and Trinket. So I think those 3 are quite strong decks after October 2nd. All with excellent Delver matchups. Not sure about Azorius Kitty.
Definitely. I've played against David when he's running Azorius Kitty, and it really sort of depends on the draws. Like sometimes he'll get the problem White Weenie draw for Delver, where they have multiple Core Sky Fissures into Mole Drifters and stuff, and you just run out of counter spells sometimes. But overall, I actually think the Azorius Kitty matchup's relatively easy for Delver.
Okay, like 60-40 for Delver, or?
Yeah, it's probably like 60-40 for Delver, because you can always, his removal is all enchantments, so you can snap your creatures and get rid of the enchantments and replay your creature, or...
Of course, that should be a problem.
His Spreading Seas don't really do anything against you.
Do you think he's going to take those out that 8 post is gone?
Yeah.
I don't think so, actually, because...
Really?
Yeah. Well, talking to David, the Spreading Seas actually aren't that good against post, because they just have Ghostly Flicker. The Spreading Seas are actually, where they really shine is against landlight decks such as Goblins and Stompy, where you really just screw their mana by spreading seas. They're 1 mountain or they're 1 forest, or even if you Spreading Seas one of their forests or one of 2 forests or one of 2 mountains, and it just really messes with their mana, turns them off of doing a lot of things that they would normally do. And as he said before, Spreading Seas is not actually that good against post because they just flicker it.
Yeah, and I guess they're mostly running blue anyways, so...
Yeah. So no, I don't think you remove Spreading Seas. Also, it sort of serves an engine with the Skyfisher and Dreamstalker, where he gets to just cycle through his deck by bouncing Spreading Seas back and forth, back to his hand and replaying it. So no, I think it's really a core piece of the deck and an engine. So I don't think that he removes that.
Should we go talk more about these decks? Maybe not every listener knows what's in them.
Yeah, we can. Let me pull up Azorius Kitty list. MTGO dash stats.
I feel like it's been a while since he actually showed with one.
I know he placed a couple times, even if it hasn't shown up on the.
Somebody else placed with it in the last daily I checked, but that was last week.
MTGO stats. It's loading really slow, guys, so we'll get to it.
I have David told me that he thinks Azorius Kitty is like the best deck right now after the bannings.
I don't know if it would actually. I don't think Azorius Kitty would beat Trinket Control.
No, I agree.
I think it's just really, really strong against Trinket Control. So, or I think Trinket Control is really, really strong against the decks that are out trying to outgrind it, and especially now with the big mana base gone.
Yeah. Actually, Trinket, this blue-black Muldrifter, a Trinket Mage, mono-black control deck, pretty much that is Trinket. Now with these bannings, every single bad matchup for Trinket is gone, except Burn, and I don't see Burn coming back.
Maybe a little. Might increase a little bit, but nothing. Yeah, nothing crazy.
But if everybody thinks Delver is the nuts now, you can't play Burn into a field full of Delvers.
No, not really.
No. No, and Burn will also have problems dealing with Cyclops too, because Cyclops can bring in Hydroblast and still kill you on turn 4. So, yeah, I don't think that Burn really has a chance. I don't think it was ever really had a chance to begin with. I think Burn is really a metagame choice whenever you're... And it was really only good in one metagame where Fissure wasn't rampant, and like the only Fissure deck that was there was the enchantment-based Fissure deck that couldn't gain life.
Yeah.
That was a dog biscuit.
And Burn, and Burn hated that one out of the metagame, I think.
I think Burn is like herpes. You think it's gone, but then every time it comes back when it's the least convenient.
I mean, you have to at least consider the fact that in Pauper, the best life gain opportunity was Glimmer Post. And no one's going to be running just Glimmer Post in a deck. So, I mean, how many other decks are actually running anything with life gain?
Speaking of which, we have Azorius Kitty.
Oh, well, that's true. You're right. I take that back.
So Azorius Kitty, I'm going to go over the deck list real quick. We have 3 Azorius Chanceries, 2 Azorius Guild Gates, 8 Islands, 4 Kabira Crossroads. The land that enters tapped and you gain 2 life when it enters. And 3 planes for the land base. So yeah, we already have 4 lands right there that are going to gain them life, and that'll hedge the bet on Burn. For creatures, we have 2 Drake Familiars, 4 Dreamstalkers, 4 Core Sky Fishers, 4 Lone Missionaries, 2 Automancers, 3 Muldrifters, and an Ether Snipe. What do you guys think about the creatures?
I love it. I love the utility you get. My Core Skyfisher may be my favorite Pauper card because of all the different tricks you can do with things that enter the battlefield.
Yeah, and you have a lot of good creatures that enter the battlefield and do stuff, such as Automancer, Muldrifter, and Ether Snipe, and Lone Missionary. So,
definitely.
And then for spells, we have 4 Preordains, 3 Journey to Nowhere, 2 Perilous Research, 4 Spreading Seas, 1 Hopple, 1 Oblivion Ring, 3 Reality Acids, 2 Faith's Fetters. So continue on the bounce theme. You can journey, and if they snap their creature back to his hand, then you can bounce your journey back to your hand with a Dreamstalker or Drake Familiar, and then replay the journey. Then you've got the Spreading Seas engine, where you get to draw a card every time it enters the battlefield. So you just bounce that and cycle through your deck with everything else. Reality Acid for permanent destruction, and I really like the action here. A lot of people have tried it to make Reality Acid deck work, and I think this is really the first one that I've seen that actually makes it really work.
It's so grindy, that deck. It's insane.
Yeah. And Reality Acid's like your catch-all. It just gets rid of every problem that you can have. Gets rid of opposing Muldrifters, or you run out of spells or stuff to do, or it really just kind of closes out the game too. If you've got a couple of dudes on the ground beating, and you can hold on to stuff like Dreamstalkers and Drake Familiars and just reality asset anything they play.
The only problem is the mana base it requires to really get that going.
Yep. And to make up for the mana base and the slower start that he has, he's got like these life gain cards, Face Fetters, the Lone Missionaries, and the Kabir Crossroads. So yeah, he's going to be a little bit slower than most decks, but he does have the life gain to make up for lost time, essentially.
Yeah. It's I was gonna say it's just like, you know, when you look at Izzet Post, that was exactly what it was doing. Is it wouldn't get anything going until like the mid to late game, so it would use that life gain on the Glimmer Post, and this is kind of the same thing, just without that 8-post mana base.
Yep. And obviously, it's also got the disruption of Journeys and Hobble Oblivion Rings that can just disrupt your opponent until you get Muldrifter and whatnot online. So. For the sideboard, we have an additional Hobble, an additional Journey to Nowhere, Circle of Protection Green,
Nice.
2 of them, 2 Circle of Protection Reds,
Wow.
2 Holy Lights, 2 Hydroblasts, 3 Course Sanctifiers, and 2 Serrated Arrows.
Sounds good to me.
There's supposed to be an update. I don't think I
so-
remember seeing the circles in there, but that's I guess that's gonna be pretty brutal in those aggro matchups.
Yeah, he plays the Circle of Protection Green against Stompy, and Stompy just loses. Stompy's definitely going to have to start playing Gleeful Sabotage again, I think, because the Circle of Protection is just going to shut him down.
Yep.
And I always liked Gleeful Sabotage, too, much more than some other folks do. The potentials for 2-for-1s are just often way too good. Especially with Nettle Sentinels untapping whenever you cast Gleeful Sabotage, so you get to 2-for-1 and still attack. Yeah, I think I like
exactly.
that plan right there. So yeah, the sideboard looks like it can pretty much handle anything that the metagame can throw at it. The Sanctifiers just come in and wreck Affinity. The Serrated Arrows beat Delver into Oblivion. Circle Protection Red just says, I don't care about Kiln Fiend and Cyclops.
Goblins. All of the above.
Goblins, Hydroblast. Yeah. So, this is definitely a very strong deck for the metagame. I do think that Trinket's probably actually a little bit better. But Azorius Kitty just sort of hits on a different plan, right? Because sometimes with Trinket control, you can just get run over by like Stompy if you can't get the Life Staff engine online fast enough.
Yeah, and if you can't get the timely Crypt Rat.
Yeah. So Azorius Kitty I think it has a much better ability to delay than Trinket
Being
does.
a David Schaffer deck, it's probably kill Stompy.
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's what David Schaffer does when he brews decks. Is he's alright, how am I going to just destroy Stompy?
Sounds like a smart plan.
Yeah. He was the sole reason I stopped playing Stompy back in April or May, whenever Simic Stormpost was the thing, and Stompy just couldn't beat Chained Moments pieces.
Having said that, incorporating Spinning Darkness into Trinket really improves the matchup against Stompy.
Yeah, now, you might have talked about this before. Why doesn't Trinket play Snuff Out as well?
Because it can't afford the life loss.
Okay, that makes sense.
Even with the staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the staff only gains you 3 life, and it's not always easy to trigger that either. Like, you have like the Fume Spitters and the Crypt Rats that can kill themselves, but sometimes the life gain is just too slow.
Yeah, if you're still talking about the Stompy matchup, the life staff is not essential in that matchup at all. It's all about Crypt Rats, pretty much. So stopping the Stompy attack by either just outvaluing them before they can kill you or Crypt Ratting them. And then Spinning Darkness helps even more than life stuff.
Okay, well, I was trying to pull up a trinket list, but that was not a trinket list. This guy's is a trinket list.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a little while, I think, since we've seen one.
No,
nice
there was
deck,
a trinket
though.
deck,
Hopefully it
a
comes
4-0
back.
trinket deck last week.
Was there really? I must have missed that one.
There's been like results with trinkets by different players all the time here, but like 1 or 3 every week. Of course, it had such a great matchup against the decks that killed the Stormpost decks. So Stompy, Affinity, Delver. And then if you could run through the daily without ever running into Temporal Fissure, then you had a field day. You want me to
Right,
do the
too.
list for trinket?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll link to these lists in the show notes, of course. So, Trinket today has 4 Fume Spitters, or first the lands maybe, 4 Dimir Aqueducts. These are essential to the deck and should never be less than 4. 1 island, because this is a mono black control deck. 1 Bojuka Bog, 7 Swamps, 3 Vault of Whispers, 1 Baron Moor, and 4 Terramorphic Expanse. And that 1 Baron Moor might look totally random, but it was a result from now almost 1,400 matches with the deck. And it should be exactly 1 Baron Moor. So like trial and error. 4 creatures, we play 20 of them. 4 Fume Spitters, 4 Ogre of Skulls, 2 Chittering Rats, 3 Crypt Rats, 3 Trinket Mages, and 4 Muldrifters. And never ever go below 4 Muldrifters, because it is an awesome, fantastic creature and my absolute favorite creature in Pauper. Other spells then, 2 Executioner's Capsule, 1 Life Staff, and those 2 together with the 3 Vaults are the 6 Trinkets for Trinket Mage. 3 Undying Evil, 3 Tragic Slips, 4 Sign in Blood, 4 Diabolic Edicts, and 2 Grim Harvest. And the 2 Grim Harvest gives this deck an extremely good late game. So in the end, I had a lot of wins against this at post, and the creator of the deck, Power T, was defeating is at post all the time. So I'm still claiming that this deck had a very good is at post matchup, but it was extremely complicated. It was something you had to practice a lot. In the sideboard, we have 4 Duress, 1 Nihil Spellbomb, 1 Sylvok Lifestaff, 1 Distress, 2 Chittering Rats, 2 Get's Verdict, 2 Spinning Darkness, 1 Crypt Rat, and 1 Deep Analysis. And the cards that we never changed the sideboard to handle Temporal Fissure, because it was so bad that we didn't want to dilute the sideboard against all the good matchups and then try to win. Try to make a 10-90 matchup into a 15-85 felt meaningless. So the cards that... I think the sideboard pretty much stays the same. I'm gonna think about that, but I think it's quite good as is.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I played with this deck quite a bit before Fissure became a thing, and it's definitely very, very strong. It's plays out like a mono black control deck, except just a lot more grindy. You're not trying to rat them to death. You're really trying to grind out the win and get to Muldrifter, Grim Harvest, happy times.
There are no insignificant creatures in this deck, like Ravenous Rats or Phyrexian Ragers, creatures that do too little to be worth a card. But every creature here will do tons. Be a 2-for-1 or be even more.
Yeah, and the Fume Spitter really just kind of puts a wrench in Delver plans.
Yeah, Fume Spitter is key to defeating a lot of the good decks. It's really good against most of the tier 1 aggro decks. The loose cards in the deck, actually, the people... I hear a lot, I see a lot of people changing this list, but the 3rd Undying Evil and the 2 Chittering Rats are the 3 loosest cards.
Yeah, sometimes those are really sort of marginal, but sometimes they just completely blow people out. Undying Evil and Augur of Skulls is just brutal. Your opponents almost can't win after you do that.
Yeah, that was so fun against the old Storm decks when you could get that.
I don't know, I think my favorite play in Pauper just is the evoke of Muldrifter into Undying Evil.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing more
too.
satisfying in the game.
And then you Grim Harvest it
I
and
don't know.
do it again.
Yeah.
I kind of prefer the Aggro Skulls thing to the Muldrifter thing, because Aggro Skulls you do it on turn 3 and they mulliganed to 3.
Yeah,
Of
probably
course,
worse than
the
that.
Cloudpost matchups are gone now, but actually, Muldrifter on Daniel was more effective against Is It Post than Ogre of Skulls, because Is It Post could, and the Fissure Post decks could get started from nothing and come back. If you understand what I mean, even taking their entire hand often didn't help if they top decked well enough.
Yeah, their deck was, such a majority of it was just draw spells straight up.
But
Yeah.
we can forget about them now.
Definitely. What was the third big deck that we just mono black control?
Yeah. I think maybe Boros
Yeah,
Kitty is
and-
dominated by Azorius Kitty, but I think Boros Kitty is an option as well. It feels very strong.
You know what?
I don't know. I think the Azorius Kitty Boros Kitty matchup is pretty even.
It's definitely an
around.
interesting one.
Yeah, because both decks are really drawing a lot of cards, and the Boros Kitty has access to the Hydroblast or the Pyroblast, and the Azorius Kitty has Hydroblast, so it really becomes like a real mind game.
Yeah, that's Boros Kitty is one of my favorite recent decks that has been developed, and I have so much fun with that because you draw so much off of it. But when I sat down to my very first game against Eye Candy, that Cyclops deck, and I got stomped and I couldn't handle it. I have such a thing against that Eye Candy deck. I think it's so terrible. It's such a glass cannon, and when I got just rolled over by it, I was like, maybe I need to find a different deck.
Well, Trinket has a pretty good matchup against.
Oh, definitely. I'm a big fan of Trinket, so you'll find me playing that at some points.
Yeah, Trinket, or really, I think Cyclops just sort of dies as a deck here, because it's not. I mean, it's significantly better with the advent of Cyclops, but before Cyclops, it was Dragonauts, and I mean, the deck could still Goldfish at turn 4 win pretty consistently.
It was much weaker because, that simple addition of 1 toughness put it out of range of, all your lightning bolts. That was huge.
Tell that to Surukuko, I think his name was. He was like 4-0ing with Delver Fiend all the time in 2012 in the middle of Grapeshot Storm and Infect.
There's definitely something to be said for skill level.
Yeah.
So I think it will be around, but it will be significantly less powerful. Maybe tier 2 then, or tier 3.
Yeah, because it just gets blown out by the mid-rangey decks now. Like, even Affinity that plays 3 Doomblades in the sideboard is going to have an excellent matchup against Delver Fiend.
What do you think of White Weenie?
Oh, White Weenie gets to come back at least.
That might be all.
Biggest problem White Weenie had was really that it just couldn't beat Fissure. It was just one turn too slow to beat Fissure. But now, the value creatures get to come back, and the White Weenie gets to come back, and they have lots of value creatures that are really tough to deal with, like Loyal Cathar and Squadron Hawk.
Great Delver matchup, right?
Yeah, supposedly it has a good Delver matchup. I don't think I've ever actually really lost to White Weenie.
Have you actually
Have
had a
you
chance
ever
to
played
play
one?
much of it? Yeah.
In a tournament.
Now, in the tournament, I've played them 2 or 3 times. I think it was all bad players mostly, though. I don't think I've ever actually played somebody who was good with White Weenie that I just straight up beat because I'm better than them. So, no, I don't think I've ever actually really played a good White Weenie player.
Well, Chris, I know you and I were talking about it a little bit last night. I feel the deck, it's got a couple of nice tricks, like you said, the Cathar, but it feels so boring. It feels like there really isn't much to it as opposed to something like Stompy, which has, such great combat tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Stompy Light. You don't have to think as much as when you play Stompy.
Yeah, but you're playing White Weenie and you resolve a Squadron Hawk against Delver. They just lose so much whenever you resolve that Squadron Hawk. or even when you resolve a bone splitter and all of a sudden everything you play becomes a legitimate threat that not even Spire Golem can block. Yeah, so yeah, maybe it does have a really good Delver matchup, and I just haven't played anybody good. But as you guys are saying, it doesn't. It has no way to get card advantage really, outside of the creatures that come back. It's not drawing any cards or having any threats that can't just necessarily be ignored.
I think it will come back in full force and be like 10-15% of the metagame, like it was before. And even then...
You think White Weenie's going to come back that hard?
Yes.
Really?
Last year it had a lousy Storm matchup, but it was still 10-15% of the metagame. A lot of 2012.
No, I think
Not
I
of the
personally would be
winners, but the
surprised.
decks. I think a lot of people have been waiting to play White Weenie again.
I don't know that it'll come back. I shared the deck list with you guys. I'm not going to go over it, but this is the mono black control list that I'd go with, and we'll include it in the show notes. Sneak Attack Kid, I think he has probably the most solid mono black control list.
Is that the one with the zombie recursion?
No. This is standard Rats plan with Unearths and Okiba Gang Shinobis.
Sweet.
Echoing Decays. Singer from Sengar is the one who plays the zombie recursion engine.
Which was kind of nice. Something different.
Yeah, I do like his list too. But I would play Sneak Attack Kids. That's the one I've been testing with, is Sneak Attack Kid variety of mono black control. And it's really, really good.
Is it old school like Tendrils and Corrupt? I don't think I've seen his specifically.
No, it has Tendrils in the sideboard. No Corrupts though. Yeah, this is just a lot of Rats and Okiba Gangs. So it's pretty sweet.
Dave, what do you think of ninja teachings?
Are we talking like what do you specifically mean by that?
It used to be everywhere, the blue-black control deck with mystical teachings and ninjas and Okiba gangs.
I was gonna say I've seen a couple in like the Just for Fun room. I don't know.
It used to be a force back in, like, before I started playing Pauper. If you look at old result list, I see it like
Really?
2010 or something.
No, I'm like I said, my only interaction with something like that has been the Just for Fun room, and I always thought it was a little bit weird because I'm a huge fan of mystical teachings decks. I wrote a really long piece about like every single possible option you can choose, and hopefully it can come back in this new metagame. But when you start working in a lot of creatures like that, you're really kind of weakening the deck.
All right. I tried playing it only once, and then I ran into Delver, and then it wasn't any fun.
Yeah. That seems to be the reaction a lot of people have to just Pauper in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, you run into Delver. Sometimes it's just not fun. And it's a definite learning curve. You need to learn how to beat Delver. And I think a lot of people have been doing that recently. They've been just learning how to beat Delver, and that's why I'm not getting results.
Yeah,
anymore.
it's not so much that the deck is so, overpowered or anything. It's just that newer players may not be familiar with it. And if you play it a couple of times, you start to understand the interactions it has, then it's not so bad.
Yeah, like, people are all of a sudden playing around spell setters the right way and, waiting to use their lightning bolts to kill my ninjas. And I'm just like, when did you guys actually get smart and learn how to play against me?
Well, consider the Delver's been such a force for so long. Like, I guess since Delver was printed. It's a lot of time to learn.
Yeah. Well, I'd make this reference because I just completely obliterated dailies in basically like June through July, or June through August, probably even back into May, where I would enter a daily and I had about a 75% chance to cash it. Playing Delver, it was like that easy to me. And then I go on a 12 entry losing streak here, so it's really frustrating as somebody who used to win so often that now I'm like I can't win at all unless I come up against Delver Fiend.
Don't underestimate the force of the long run, because 12 dailies are still a very small sample size.
Yeah, I mean, considering that the my run in May through August really paid for me to do Magic, and I've still got quite a few leftover tickets from that run. I'm not too concerned about it, but it is really frustrating to have that happen.
Well, I went on a tangent at one point because, with the first set of bans that took out, the Red Storms, what people didn't seem to realize is that before that, despite how oppressive those two decks, Storm and Effect felt, like Delver was actually such a significant part of the metagame, and it was such a heavily played deck. So everyone's sitting there complaining about those two, and I was sitting there, in the background screaming at people like, "What are you doing?" Because Delver's here, and it's running over everything, and you're caring about Infect, which is like such a hit or miss. That's kind of a similar thing to the Eye Candy deck. It's a glass cannon.
Yeah. Well, Delver is always sort of the police that keeps the broken decks in check.
Yeah,
and
I think that's why they keep
people,
it.
Yeah, why people appreciate it as well and are not angry at it.
Yeah, I've learned to live with
Yeah,
it. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, and Delver's probably the only reason that Cyclops is not like the number one deck right now, because Cyclops runs over Stompy and Fissure and Affinity without any real problems. It doesn't; those decks really can't interact with a single Apostle's Blessing. Whereas Delver can, and I think it's the only reason that Cyclops isn't like the number one deck right now.
Yeah, I think
it's a necessary evil, I think.
Yeah, so Delver's always going to be the deck that keeps these really broken interactions in check.
One of my favorite matchups to play ever in Pauper was Infect versus Delver Fiend. Before Nivik Cyclos, before the last bannings, it was like, okay, this game will last very short, and it will be 2 or 3 rounds. Can I kill him turn 2, or will he kill me turn 3?
Yeah, I used to jump into 2-mans with Infect all the time, just because they were so fast.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like you win or you lose by turn 3.
Yep.
Yeah, or by you often had turn 2 kills with the old Infect deck. I was like, oh, I get to attack with my Glistener Elf. Awesome.
Oh yeah, that was hands down what made that deck.
Yep. What do you think?
So what other decks?
Sorry?
What other decks come in? I'm looking at
What
one right
about
now, Elves.
Elves? I think have outlasted their welcome now and will die because of the bannings, actually,
Yeah, they should have a hard match against MBC.
and against all the mid-range decks.
Yeah, Elves pretty much just loses to Crypt Rats. And Quark Clan Shaman.
Yep.
I mean, I'm assuming like Hexproof steps up with the new set.
Yeah, Hexproof steps up, I think, but they're also going to have a big problem with Mono Black Control coming back, because Mono Black Control runs guess verdicts and stuff.
Yeah, they'll have to
So
kind of
Hexproof
switch. Some of the recent Mono Black Control decks have kind of shifted a little bit away from that because Hexproof hasn't been a thing, but they'll definitely, you're right, and shift back to it.
I'm looking at
definitely.
your image of the metagame right now, Dave, and I think this. I just have to reflect now that I think we're going to have an amazing metagame now. It will be so full of choices, and it's not rock paper scissors, but it's at least 6 to 8 different things that will fight each other.
Definitely. Yeah,
what about Tortured
combo
Existence?
I was gonna say combo kind of just weasels out. I don't know what happens to combo these days. Like it's like Weave Fiend and that's it.
Yeah, we have GPH Snake, one of the brewers of MTG Strat. He has done some promising testing with the Love Train deck. That's sort of freed from the real Axebane Guardian combo, but it also includes a couple of other combos, so you have a much easier time finding your combo than in a regular free from the real deck. And it looks to be a thing, actually. His testing is going very well.
Yeah.
Also, one of the decks
You also
remaining
have,
in the Pauper Gauntlet.
Well, you also have this this new card spoiled with Theros called Commune with the Gods, where It's essentially a Grizzly Salvage for a creature or an enchantment.
Yeah, that was leading to my next question. What about Tortured Existence?
Wow, they get a fun new toy in Theros.
Yeah.
Yes.
Might go back to green-black.
And if you ever watched E Hustle play his Tortured Existence deck and daily events and whatever, he's really, really, really good at it. And you can see how Tortured Existence can grind out wins like almost no other deck except for maybe Trinket Control. So Tortured Existence is very grindy, and I think it probably makes a comeback, although it's a very hard deck to play, so maybe it doesn't make as big a comeback as...
And he crushes Delver.
Yeah, I actually played against him in a daily event, and what happened was just basically I mulliganed into Oblivion both games, but I played him afterwards, and I beat him pretty handily. Decided to leave it at 50-50
Right.
for me.
I think it has an excellent Delver matchup. It's and I think he has excellent results against Delver as well.
It's just very
Because it's-
skill-intensive.
Yeah,
So,
and he has
actually play it.
recurring fume spitters and stuff. That's not what Delver wants to see.
Definitely not. What other decks? What other decks make a comeback?
We're going to talk about possibility of Tron showing up.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that.
Does that mean no one thinks,
So-
that, other than me, that it has a possibility?
I think
a
it
lot
does.
A lot of people have talked about it.
I mean, we had seen actually at one point in time, not very often, but there was a like mono green that was Tron, and it used things like Chromatic Star, Chromatic Sphere, and the Fangren Marauder. And it's not a big combo, but it was like a mono green, kind of like Green Post is in a similar way, and had a lot more focus on that life gain element.
I think there will be people brewing so much with Ursa lands that today's financial tip is probably to pick up the Ursa lands. As they
Yeah,
are not.
probably.
Yeah. I think there will be a deck that will use the Tron engine. Just look at Modern.
Yeah, say, isn't there a modern deck that does the same?
there are a
thing?
couple
Uses,
of them.
Brutal, too.
Tron,
Yeah, really brutal.
say uses the Tron engine with like Fangren Marauders and Stars and
There's
stuff.
a green-red one that uses Karn. I hate playing it. It's just, it wrecks me every time.
And
But,
then the
I
blue
feel
one
like-
with the Mindslaver locks.
Yeah. Oh, that one's terrible too. You're right, there is no good one.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have Karn or Mindslaver in Pauper,
That's
so
good.
are we really ramping into? Are we really ramping into like Ulamog's Crusher again, or what are we ramping into that we can't really? I mean, we can't really play anything until turn 4, right? Where you have your Urzatron plus the colored mana that you need.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're looking at Crusher, that's colorless. But
Yeah.
I think you will ramp into the stuff that crushes the grindy mid-range decks. If the grindy mid-range decks makes a big comeback. So if you actually build Green Post with Tron, like you said, Dave, then I think you have a pretty good matchup against the grindy mid-range decks.
I think it has to be green, though. I think it has to be green for things like
Yes.
crop rotation, because it's so hard. With 8 posts, you were benefiting from the fact that it was put together with just 2 lands. Like, now you have to find 3 different lands in order to get that going. So first off, that's going to hurt your mana base because you're running less colored, less basics. I mean, I guess prisms and stuff help a little bit, but you're going to need the green for stuff like crop rotation to search that out.
Yeah, I would start with the Green Post shell and try to adapt it to Tron.
I don't think we'll see like an Is It Tron, as cool as it could be.
I don't think.
Yeah.
If David can build a Simic Stormtron, or what do you call it, Simic-tron, then there's
That would
hope
be
for
hysterical.
the 2-color Tron decks.
Yeah. Say, I think you could probably do a blue-green Tron, because with blue you get Preordain and Ponder and stuff to find your lands.
But you
Yeah,
already
but again,
have
like I
so many
said,
problems
you're in green.
with-
Yeah, I mean, you're in green. That's obviously true, but I think blue has the filtering that you really need to play something like this.
But you already struggle to get colored mana with Simic Stormpost.
Yeah.
And now you're bringing in 4 more lands with no color.
Yeah, well, and hence why we think that Tron is not going to work.
It was kind of a similar thing, when I had talked about at some point in time The possibility of Pauper going to 3 colors in a deck. And I said even there, again, you kind of have to go into green as one of your 3 colors just to fix the colors. So, I mean, I think a Tron deck would suffer from kind of that same symptom.
Yeah, you have to play green, and green doesn't... I mean, it's got really big, powerful dudes, but sometimes you need to be able to get to them, or else you just lose.
What about watch rights?
I don't know, you've had more experience playing that.
I've never played it.
What do you think? Okay, well... I've never played it either. I think it's...
Wait, you say neither of you have played it? Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's very janky. I love the deck because, when I ran those costs, it turned out to be like as cheap as you could possibly build a deck for. That was that deck. And, I mean, it works. It's a lot of fun when you can pull it off. It actually, you know what? You may be right. Maybe it has some kind of angle now that it's in, an aggro-based metagame that we're expecting at least. I guess it really depends how much those mid-range decks step up. If it stays very heavy on aggro, maybe that could be a thing, because you could use, tokens to chump block for days, but who knows?
Yeah, really janky. It seems like it just loses Delver, right?
Haven't played that matchup. Quite possibly, though. You're right.
Yeah,
it just save a counter spell for either watch or rights,
Yeah. So speaking of like counter spells and stuff, what about mono blue control? You guys see that?
In which form?
Like
just straight up mono blue control.
It runs hard counter spells instead of spell stutters and clouds of fairies and ninjas. So you're running your basic creature base is 4 Delvers and 4 Spire Golems, and then you usually run 2 or 3 like Frostburn Weirds or Seagate Oracles, and the rest is basically hard counter spells and card draw.
But it should be a deck that immediately benefits from the bannings and will have a happy time the first weeks before the mid-range decks come into play and grind it to death.
Yep. I played with the mono blue control deck a lot. It was one of the first decks that I picked up in Pauper, watching Chris Davis from Channel Fireball play it, and I was like, this deck can't lose, can it? Yes, it can.
Yep.
But it's actually a really good deck. Sometimes you don't realize, and playing mono blue control has made me a better like Delver Fairy player too, because you realize just how powerful Delver and Spire Golem are. That they can be literally the only creatures in your deck, and you can still win.
Is there really any advantage to playing it over Delver? I mean, I've not personally tried either in any kind of competitive form, but
it wins over Delver.
Does it really have a good matchup there?
Yeah, it has generally a good...
It has only the strong cards in the Delver mirror, so it's like a Delver deck against another Delver deck, but you cut all the bad cards and have only the good cards, like Spire Golems, like Delver, and counterspells. Chris taught me that.
I say it runs hard counters too, so you're never gonna have that awkward moment where your opponent plays a Mole Drifter and you're sitting there with like 3 spell stutters in your hand.
Yeah.
It's the spell stutters are going to be just counter spells, whether they be deprives, logic knots, or straight up counter spell.
I think the even worse scenario is when you're that guy playing the Mole Drifter and they can throw down a spell stutter sprite and counter it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're probably already losing then.
But
that's the time to give up.
Yep. Find that concede
button. If they got 4 fairies on the board, and you're trying to land your first Mole Drifter, you're probably already losing.
Still, I've been there. Let me just say.
Yeah, it's got to be an awful feeling. I think I've only ever spell stutter Mole Drifter maybe 2 or 3 times, and probably 200 or 300 matches.
Wow.
So
I'd be okay with just a regular mono blue control stepping up, maybe as opposed to being the Delver being the top control deck. I mean.
Yeah, mono blue control. It's pretty sweet in the Delver mirror. I think it's actually got a much better matchup against Stompy than Delver Fairies does. This sort of sounds weird, but the dispels, like the mono blue control decks usually run mainboard dispels, so that's really strong. And it's also got like serrated arrows and stuff that Delver Fears can't necessarily get to reliably or get to the mana on time reliably.
There is 2 classic episodes of Pauper's Cage where New Plan talks about playing mono blue control from last year, and he was very obsessed with the Stompy matchup, considering that one of the biggest problems for the deck.
It is still a big problem because, Stompy can throw down 3 guys and make you deal with them and then back them up with Pump, but I think it's a much stronger matchup than Delver Fairies.
All right. Yeah, you don't die to Scattershot Archer.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things too about playing Mono Blue Control is when I'm playing it, people always sideboard in Scattershot Archer because they just assume that I'm Fairies. Scattershot Archer doesn't do anything against Mono Blue Control. It actually does. It almost does less than nothing.
It's a 1-2 for 1.
Yeah. I think New Plan, isn't he the one who he was going for mono blue control and was working in the Silkbind fairies?
Yes.
That combo, it's for those that don't know that 1/3 fairy, it has flying and an ability you can untap it for 1 and a white or blue to tap target creature. And he would combo that with the Viridian Longbow. And I think that was giving him definitely an edge against, even Delver, any of those little 1 toughness guys.
Yep.
Yeah, Viridian Longbow is that's such a beating when you're playing Delver too, and it's really not that much of a beating when you're playing Mono Blue Control. You probably lose your Delvers, but you get to keep your Spire Golems and Secret Oracles or whatever.
I think he's.
So
I was just gonna say, I think he's not going to be happy. I remember hearing him. He was just starting work on a new Cloudpost deck. He's always coming up with some really cool, innovative brews, but I think his latest thing was a new Cloudpost deck. So I'm guessing he's not too happy about it now.
I ran the New Plan by him in the Pauper Gauntlet, and it was one of the most complicated decks I played. It was really,
but
really complex.
I give the guy a lot of respect because there's a lot of fun stuff he's got going on there.
Yep.
Yeah, so his most recent deck was basically just a flicker deck where he was flickering Stone.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yep, I think that was.
He evolved that into another deck that was the one I played. So we wanted to call it the newest plan, but it entered the scrolls as the new plan.
Yeah, so he was flickering Stonehorn Dignitaries and then like Fault Grinders against post.
He did cut the Dignitaries in the second version. I was really disappointed because I really liked that, flicker Stone and Dignitary every turn, so nobody can ever attack.
What's cool about Stonehorn Dignitary is that if you flicker it, then the skipped combat steps stack. So
insane.
You can actually, if you flicker it 4 times in a single turn, then your opponent skips their next 4 combat steps.
That's
Do you
insane.
think Ghostly
There's no work
Flicker
that way.
Do you think Ghostly Flicker can find a home?
Yeah, definitely. There are decks waiting to abuse Ghostly Flicker.
What about Cloud of Fairies and Infinite Mana? Which can still be done.
Yeah, it can still be done. The question is, what are you doing it for anymore?
That's the big question. What do you want to do with it?
I said though, I forget where I said it, but it's only a matter of time before someone figures out what they want to do with that. And someone will, I guarantee you.
What about the Simic Enchantment Storm Shell, and then go into either the horrible compulsive research win or the or Torch?
Yeah, it's still viable. Yeah. It's you can still get infinite mana, and you can still. That's one of the things that we're not looking at too. Is like combo's still going to exist. You just got to find a way to make it work.
Yeah,
somebody's got to find a way to make it work.
Got to kind of be redesigned.
Yeah, and people are relying on Fissure as a crutch to say, hey, I've got my combo now, and you actually can't do anything against me. But with Fissure gone, you just have to find a new way to torch somebody or Ghostly Flicker abuse to get everything back into your hand every turn. All your spells back into your hand every turn.
Yeah, I think.
And have an infinite source of counterspells.
I think
like that.
As contributors, a lot of us are really excited just to see what can come out of this, what someone will come up with.
For sure. Like you said, the best thing with Bannings.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks are just going to be, it's just a madhouse in the daily events, and that's kind of cool to see.
I remember how long it took for Fissure to become dominant after the bannings.
Yeah, it didn't happen right away. I mean, that was maybe a month or two at least.
At least.
Say blue Fissure, I don't think even really came into effect until like
No.
June.
Reborn had its early versions in March of Blue Fissure, but the final version
Simic was in charge. And even after that, like, the Azorius one showed up even later. And I mean, Simic was heavily played, and people slowly realized that, hey, the mono blue is much stronger. That stepped up. You haven't seen Simic in a long time. At least not the way we used to.
Oh. Yeah, say Simic is still it's still a contender. It's in like the top 10, showing 3% of the metagame on MTGO stats. So.
Yeah, it's just not where it used to be. I mean, when it first started out, that's all you saw.
Yeah, when it first started out, it was where Blue Fissure is right now.
Yep.
And, it slowly went away. It went away mostly because Blue Fissure just beats it, I think. So when people started playing Blue Fissure, it's like, oh, well, Simic is just worse, so I might as well play Blue. All right. Awkward silence again. It's always fun. Is it post goes away?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I think that's the one most people are unhappy about. Like, if no matter what side you come down on, like post, I think most people are referring to is it post.
I say not anymore. Anymore, it's like Fissure Post is the really big boogeyman. But is it
God,
Post
I just hate to refer to Fissure Post as a post deck. Like, it's such an abomination. I keep trying to like block it out of my mind,
Let's forget
it won't
about
go away. Yeah, it just won't go away.
Yeah, God forget about it. Yeah, but is it Post goes away, so you lose the big control deck, right? The is it Post really sort of made every other control deck like just seem less flashy and awesome to play.
Yep. Do we see just a regular is it control show up now? What do you think?
I don't think so.
No, not at all.
Blue-black is much stronger than blue-red.
Yeah, I think the black base is just better than from here on out. One of the big reasons that Is It Post actually was really strong was, I think, because of Rolling Thunder and the big mana base, obviously. So you could, but Rolling Thunder was like a finisher card, and without the post base, you really can't rely on Rolling Thunder to finish off your opponents anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen just every once in a while there is an is it control that shows up. I don't think it's terrible. You're definitely right. Blue-black is way stronger, but I don't know. I feel like there could be some potential, maybe still as a rogue, but I feel like there could still be some potential for that interaction.
You have all the cheap red removal that deals with Delver, for example, still has a place, of course.
Yeah.
The big disadvantage of the Mir Post wasn't that the removal was more expensive than Is It Post removal, so it didn't come online against Delver.
Yeah, and Dimir Post also, like, if you were playing Dimir Post against Is It Post always had the ability to just draw Rolling Thunder and kill you.
I'm destroy your lands.
And that's also the other thing, is like the Blue-Red Post had the destroy your lands. So I guess that's the other reason that to play the Is It Post deck is to play it for better land destruction.
Yeah, but Earth Rift doesn't look so fun now without the post engine.
Nope.
No, nobody's going to be playing land destruction anymore.
Yeah. Well, unless we see something come out of those, like we said, the Familiar Storm mana base or the Enchantment Storm. If someone can find a way to break those into something else, then you might see it come back in small portions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just so much weaker than anything else you could be doing against those types of decks.
Yeah, there's even a lot of, I was going to say, when I very first started playing against Hexproof, that was my go-to is, I'll just bring in the land destruction to get rid of the land enchants. But even now, there's so many things that people are finding and ways to deal with it that are so much better. Even just like a standard bear is going to be so much better for you against that deck as opposed to like in Stone Rain,
Yeah.
What about Slivers?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. They should show up, right? Come on. That was they're dominant, but it's really hard to keep them on the field against Fissure, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think they could make a comeback.
Of course, they won't be happy about Crypt Rats, but
No. But they can actually get
I
out
don't
of
think
range of
Maniac
Crypt
is really-
Rats, and they can do it pretty fast. By the time you get enough mana to make your Crypt Rat hit for 4, I mean, you figure a 4/4 sliver is what, 3 lords?
Yeah.
2.
And then,
three.
they get even bigger than that, too.
So I mean, having 3 lords on the field, you have them at 4/4. You're what, 4 or 5 mana? I mean, that's not necessarily enough to get your Crypt Rat going.
Hopefully you had some spot removal to take care of some of the lords before that.
Yeah.
I think what they look to do though
why
is
did Slivers really lose to Mono Blue Post?
They're just too slow.
Yeah. And
I think
it's hard against Delver as well, right?
It's sort of like the same with like Affinity. The difference is though that Delver can always spell stutter pretty much everything in the Slivers deck.
Yeah.
So that's where Delver really pulls ahead, is the ability to spell stutter the lords and stuff. They can't do that against Affinity, but the matches pretty much play the exact same way, as they're trying to assemble a couple of 4/4s to just run you over. And the difference though is that Affinity can just wait it out and play Mirror Enforcers that you can't spell stutter. And then when you go to counterspell it, then they dump their hand with Carapace Forgers and Frog Knights and stuff. But Slivers can't really do that. If you counter their one creature, then they're just like, okay, well, I'm done for the turn.
Yeah, I think they kind of lose from not having the draw. Because I mean, they can, if they get lord after lord, it's good game. But if they don't, if you kill 1 or 2 and they can't refill their hand, you're in top deck mode, and it's pretty much game over.
Yep.
Do we see what about like the Gimped Infect? I think we've covered pretty much everything except for a whole bunch of really rogue strategies.
Yeah, I think Gimped Infect should have had its spot in the should have had its time in the spotlight right now, because it had a good matchup against Temporal Fissure Post, didn't it?
Yeah, but I guess it was bad against everything else.
Yeah, and now all that remains is everything else.
Yep.
So
we may officially say goodbye to Infect after this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'll still show up every once in a while. Somebody will be like, "Ooh, Infect, it's only like $6 to build this deck. I'm gonna try it out." Because it's pretty cheap to build Infect.
It's the rankers that cost money, right?
Yeah, I think that's really the only thing that actually costs anything in the Infect deck. Most of the rest you can get from free card bots.
Yeah,
but
I mean, early ones used like Lotus Petals, but I mean, even now, there's really no point to putting it together in any form.
No.
It can still get turn 2 wins, though.
Can it? Are you sure about that? Have you checked that?
Yes.
Yeah, they get
Just
turn 1
the
Blistering
growths?
Elf, turn 2 Groundswell, Mutagenic Growth. Good game.
I guess so. I would like to see. I
Doesn't
think
have
the first couple of weeks we could see. You're talking about mono black control a lot, and you also had that off spray of the Stinkweed Zombies deck. I've always felt like that has a huge match against Delver, and going into the first week or 2 of a new metagame, I always feel that Delver is the top played deck, because people, it's a nice safety net. People know it works no matter what, and I always thought that Stinkweed Zombies has such a great matchup because there's so much discard.
I don't know. I played against the Stinkweed Zombies deck in a daily event, and I just crushed it. Yeah.
Delver
I didn't even care.
Delver is less vulnerable to discard than people think, in my opinion. That's
So unless it's like mass discard, like Augur of Skulls hurts quite a bit. Mind Rot, those type of effects actually hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't really care about Ravenous Rats. I don't really care about Rotting Rats. Liliana Spectre. Liliana Spectre is a little bit more annoying because it's actually a 2-power thing. But,
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, mostly I don't really care.
I was going to say, I guess this comes to, I think Dan was talking about this in one of your articles. It was like, in tournament practice, because I don't have time for daily events often, but in tournament practice, you can sit there and crush through all these people, and then as soon as you step into a player run event or a daily event, it's a totally different ballgame.
That's very true.
I think that was your standard Pauper article, right?
Yep. That was my standard Pauper experience.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I felt kind of that same way, and like I said, most of my experience gets to be tournament practice, just because that's what I have time for. But
Yeah, and so you mentioned like Delver's a good safety net
Yeah.
deck. So I think a lot of people need to be playing decks that are going to beat Delver because while Delver's a good safety net deck, it's a very difficult deck to pilot effectively. So if you're playing a deck that already has a good matchup against Delver and all of a sudden the influx of Delver people because their Fissure deck went away, then you're going to come up against a lot of amateur Delver players in daily
Yep.
events and you're going to be able to just run over them because they're not that good with the deck yet.
I think there's also a Delver was one of the go-to decks for like good Magic players coming to Pauper. They basically chose between Delver and Izzet Post, and of course they like to play control. And now Delver will be the only deck that people like see and think, oh, I can pick up Pauper. This looks great. I know Magic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a solid point.
So I definitely think you should play a deck that can beat Delver because everybody's predicting that Delver's going to be like the top played deck, and I kind of agree with them. I think it is. So play a deck that can beat Delver and just run over the Delver players, earn some free tickets.
I predict that Stompy will be the number one deck in the metagame just for that reason in 2 weeks.
I'm thinking of close number 2. My top 3 were Delver, Stompy, Affinity. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I predict Stompy, Delver, Affinity.
I think it's going to be some order of those 3. I think everyone can agree on that.
Yeah. I think after that, though, probably Mono Black Control.
Really? You think it's going to step up that much?
Or some form. I think so.
Huh. Can't say I've actually put a lot of thought into top 5. Like, the top 3 is just so obvious.
Yeah.
I think maybe after those 3, it'll devolve into the Wild West, which is great. But
I think there is a lot of space for a control deck there. Mono Blue Control or Trinket or Mono Black Control or... Yeah.
Yeah. I think Cyclops completely goes away.
I don't think it completely goes away, but it's not top 5.
No, it'll fall down to
Rogue.
like maybe top 10. I think it will actually be a Rogue because it already has a really bad Delver matchup.
yeah, and if Mono Black Control becomes a thing again, it has a terrible matchup against that.
Yeah. So, I think Cyclops was a result of preying on Fissure Post's slowness.
On the
And
other
the
hand,
Fissure-
you have now... Delver Fiend is like the only deck that remains that feels any combo-ish at all. So maybe all the combo players will look at the Voltron decks because Hexproof and Delver Fiend are the only 2 decks that remain.
I mean, does that seem wrong? I mean, is that make our format terrible? The fact that combo is something that's just... I mean, it's near extinct in this format.
I think it will come back.
Yeah, we just gotta wait and see what people brew with. I think. I think if you're gonna play the Voltron decks, I would rather play the Hexproof deck than Cyclops, personally.
Because of the Delver matchup.
Yeah, because of the Delver matchup, and Delver's gonna probably shoot up to 15 to 20% of the metagame, so you're probably gonna run into Delver at least every daily event you play, and that's pretty much unwinnable. Right, sitting from the Delver end of the table, I don't even really have to try that hard to beat Cyclops. It's like it just sort of you counter the creatures and they're like, oh well, there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
And then if they counter your counter, then you just Hydroblast the creature next turn. And you're like, or snap it, and they're like, well, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm out of cards now.
That's my biggest complaint about that deck, because if I ever had time to do dailies, I was mostly Mono Black Control, and you never lose that matchup because they've got 6 creatures in their deck that you have to target. And I'm running, my entire non-creature base is all creature kill. So if you stop one, Doomblade, I got another one in hand or any other spell in hand to take care of that.
Yep. But I think Hexproof is much less weak to that, to Delver. I know I lost a daily event to round 4 to Deluxikov when he was playing Hexproof. Because they can sneak in a creature on turn 1, and then they can just sort of wait, bide their time until they can land a huge enchantment on their dudes, like Ancestral Mask or something. and they have the ability to gain life too with cards like Lifelink and Armadillo Cloak, which is huge against Delver. Delver's trying to win turn 6 through 9, and anybody that's gaining any life is going to put a wrench in that plan. So Azorius Kitty their life gain is really important against Delver because it gives them time to get online. And Hexproof does the same thing. They can play Lifelink or Armadillo Cloak to give themselves more time to throw more enchantments on their dude.
So, as a Delver player, do you think Daze makes a comeback because you can get that early turn counter?
Yeah, I think it does. I think Daze is almost unplayable with Cloudpost in the meta because it was dead against 30% of the meta. So, Daze definitely makes a comeback. I don't think I'm gonna play Daze, but I don't really like Daze as a personal thing. I think maybe I'll have to.
Yeah, it's fabulous in the beginning of the game, but once you hit anywhere near the middle, it's impossible. They're gonna have 1 mana. It's not gonna stop anything.
Yeah, Daze is just one of those things that your opponents have to play around, and I think just the threat of Daze is probably good enough.
Perhaps.
To.
Is that I don't play Delver enough to really. No, but I would have just assumed, like you said, if they can slip in that turn 1, you start with a turn 1 Delver and you think that's a fantastic first turn, but if they get that turn 1 Hexproof guy down, could cause you a bunch of trouble. But I was just curious if you thought maybe having Daze in there would help prevent that in some form.
Yeah, I don't think Hexproof is a bad matchup to begin with. I think it's probably I think it's actually still in Delver's favor, but it's way more winnable than if you're playing Cyclops against Delver.
Well, I guess we'll find out.
One thing I learned when I played Daze in Delver was that you never ever want to Daze something on turn 1 because it sets you back so much. So the first Daze is pretty much turn 2.
Yeah, that's really where it's most effective, is when they're trying to slip. They're trying to go turn 2 Nettle Sentinel, and you're like query, and you're like Spell Stutter, and then they go, okay, well, I'll play a Skargan Pitskulk instead, and you're like, nope, Daze.
Yeah.
And Stompy's like, oh, crap. There goes my biggest creatures. Now I gotta rely on these young wolves to kill the Delver player. And Delver's like, I don't care. I gotta flip Delver now. You're gonna lose this race.
Yeah, that's kind of why I had a similar feeling about Gush. You're talking about the tempo loss to just the 1 land. It's like, yeah, Gush gets you a lot of cards, but is it worth that tempo loss? Because it's all situational.
Yes.
I'm
a big advocate of Gush. Card is so good.
I've hated Daze many a time, but I've never been sorry about Gush.
Really?
It's so good.
Yeah, it's because it's not necessarily tempo loss. Sometimes you only bounce 1 land back to your hand. Like if you miss a land drop on turn 4, or even turn 3. So you miss the land drop on turn 4. You have 3 lands in play. You Gush, and you replay a land. You still have counterspell mana up. You got to draw 2 cards for free and play Delver or Cloud Fairies or whatever. So yeah, Gush is awesome. Daze.
Speaking as the sorry, you first.
Yeah, Daze. I think Daze does get played a little bit more often now, at least until we know what the metagame's going to be.
Speaking as the control mid-range player, I really hate playing against Daze. Daze is very good in Delver against Trinket and probably against the other mid-range decks as well. Because it saves Delver and gives it the tempo it needs.
So guys, I think we're going to go ahead and close this out.
Sounds good.
What about Theros?
I don't know what's left.
What about Theros?
Yeah, there's a new set, it's about Greeks and stuff. I think it's called National Financial Crisis. Oh, sorry.
Low blow. I don't know. I wasn't that impressed. I don't know.
What kind of card? Okay, let's just go over it real quick. Cards that you think might see play.
I have David's list here. We talked about this before. And he made predictions about how many cards you will see from Theros in daily events in a couple of weeks. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
He predicts in a random daily you will see 8 Akroan Crusaders.
What?
Yes. But Dave, and again, the build out guy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
do you want to read the card, Chris?
As soon as it loads.
Okay.
It's a 1/1 for red, and whenever it's got a heroic ability, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, put a 1/1 red soldier creature token with haste onto the battlefield under your control. I know that's what it does.
Yeah, and this is probably the time where I should apologize for the. Was it episode 4 when I thought that storm spells would trigger heroic, but it doesn't. So I'm so ashamed right now. Sorry, bro.
Yeah, storm spells and replicate spells do not trigger heroic abilities, except for the initial casting of the spell. Because you're not casting storm spells or the replicate spells.
I mean, if that shows up, you're basically looking at a whole new red deck wins kind of strategy. Because I don't think it really fits in anything that currently exists.
Yeah,
that's true, and I think
it sort of goes in a red.
Sorry.
So it sort of goes in a red deck wins, but it's not a goblin.
No. I mean, what good does that do you in a Goblins deck? Goblins deck doesn't really have anything to activate heroic.
Yeah, it doesn't have... Yeah.
I think you're using things like Reckless Charge and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's a buyback spell that gives your creature +3/+0 until end of turn. It's an instant. I think it's an instant buyback spell.
Yeah, I think this is an entirely new deck.
Tempest. Yeah, it just becomes a way different deck. It's going to require a lot of brewing to make it work. Any sort of heroic deck, I think.
Maybe that. I'm just looking through here. You had that Dragon Mantle. I think that would be a decent addition. That's a new enchantment for 1 red. It draws a card when it enters and gives it fire breathing. I mean, you are talking about something like completely different. There's really even like eye candy. It doesn't really fit in there because you're not targeting anything. You're playing a lot of cheap spells, which is kind of the idea you want, but it's not targeting anything.
Yeah.
The
but this could be like... Go ahead.
Sorry. The next card on David's list is probably hint what he's seeing here. It's Titan Strength. It predicts there's a decimal point. Okay, he predicts 0.5 copies of Titan Strength, but I think that goes into the Acro and Crusader deck.
0.
Yeah, and Brute Force is just better, isn't it?
I think he's after the Scry for a combo-ish idea.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm curious how he came up with half a card per daily.
I think it is a decimal point. I'm not sure.
I think it means probably maybe in the sideboard. I don't know.
That's maybe.
Okay, next one is
for Commune with the Gods. We already talked about it. Probably for green, black, Tortured Existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Nylea's Presence.
I'm not really sure where this fits in.
Any deck that uses abundant growth and wants more copies.
Yeah.
I guess so. Okay.
And for Read the Bones.
Love it.
Definitely. Very strong card.
Love it. It's a little slow, but you get to dig pretty far.
Yeah. And, you're scrying, so the 2 cards that you get are probably going to be quality.
I'm still a bit skeptic about this card. It's who is going to play it. It's like mono black control. Do you want to use the 3-drop slot for a card draw spell instead of Signing Blood?
No, definitely not. Where it would have fit would have definitely been like Dimir Post. But that's out the window.
Or Grixis Storm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dimir Post has compulsive research, though.
That's true. That's true.
So, yeah, this is just worse than compulsive research. Yeah, I don't know which deck wants it, but I think some deck wants it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I really like the card, but finding a home for it, and I think that's kind of the problem I had with a lot of these things that I've seen people suggesting for this set, is I'm just not sure just yet where they fit.
Yeah.
I have that exact question about the next card. It's Omen Speaker, and I'm not too impressed by that card.
Well, that's where you and I differ. I actually think that Omen Speaker fits really well into a Dawn.
I'm not familiar with that one. Which one is that?
It's a 1 and a blue for a 1/3 human wizard, and when Omen Speaker enters the battlefield, scry 2.
But what are you cutting for this in a Delver deck?
Piracy charms.
Okay, but there is a common 1/1 flyer with scry 4 or something for 2 mana. Isn't that a better card than this one?
That's a 1. Omen Speaker as a 1/3 is going to make Stompy use their tricks to get through him.
All right.
The same reason why Seagate Oracle is really good for stopping aggressive decks, and this guy comes down a turn earlier than Seagate Oracle. And
yeah, but you would never play Seagate Oracle in a Delver deck, right?
No, because Seagate Oracle's 3 mana.
Yeah. Occasionally mono blue.
I
control,
do play,
but not often.
Yeah, say mono blue control does it, and so this guy's like he sort of does the same thing for Delver that Frostburn Weird does, except this guy gets card advantage. Well, card selection, I guess. So he fits into the Frostburn Weird spot, or in my case, the Piracy Charm spot.
All right.
But I mean, those do way different things. You really would drop Piracy Charm for it?
Yeah.
I mean, move it to the sideboard, or just completely drop it?
I think I'm completely dropping it at this point. It depends on the meta, of course, but it almost seems like it never does enough. Like I was using it as a tech against other Delver decks, but what I found is if I'm using Piracy Charm to get through, then I'm often having to 2-for-1 myself by sacrificing a Delver to kill his Spire Golem, and even then it's not necessarily the greatest, because if they have more counterspells than you, then that's not going to work, and you just sacrifice your Delver. So it's okay against Stompy. It's not the greatest, and it's okay against Goblins, but even then it's not really that good, because they've got all their Goblin creatures that sacrifice to give their other dude +1/+1, or Mog War Marshal that's a 2-for-1. So I don't like it in too many matchups. That I think Omen Speaker would be a better fit.
But can you replace 3 1-mana sorceries with 3 2-mana creatures?
It's doing essentially the same thing that Piracy Charm was trying.
But it will trigger Delver less often. But it will block ninjas, and it will. You can get it twice with a ninja.
Yeah. So it'll block ninjas. It can attack into, it can attack into fairies and
be a ninja.
So, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So, go ahead.
I just I'm not sold on it. Go ahead.
The last card on David's list is quite surprisingly Spark Jolt. So that's why I think he's really appreciating Scry. So 2 copies of Spark Jolt is his last prediction.
I think Trickery is just better.
Yeah, I don't. But if you really love Scry, then Spark Jolt is an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you love Scry, I'd prefer the versatility of the potential 2-for-1 for Trickeries.
Yeah.
There.
No, that's kind of an underwhelming list. I feel like he's left some stuff off there.
What are you thinking of in particular?
Well, we got so many enchantments, and you're talking about hexproof going up, stuff like I'm looking here, Feral Invocation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll grant it's not anywhere near as crazy powerful as some of the enchantments we currently have for hexproof, but I just feel like there's some oddball potential in some of these things.
Yeah, Feral Invocation's sweet.
But you're competing with Ancestral Mask or...
Yeah, that's the thing.
Or Armadillo Cloak.
3 CC.
Well, what's pretty cool about the Feral Invocation is you can flash it in, and if your Delver player has to counter it, right? If you have any enchantments on the field, then Feral Invocation will bait out a counterspell. It may not bait out a counterspell, but even if it doesn't bait out a counterspell, you can just attack him with your giant creature now because you Feral Invocated a few times. I could see this.
I mean,
I could see this being played.
I agree, Dan. It's definitely not an ideal. It's not anywhere near your most powerful in that 3 converted mana spot. And maybe if it cost less, it would be way more playable. But every time I see these enchantments that they throw out, I think there may be something. I mean, we've seen Umbra show up in a single of for hexproof. I mean, it's just what it gives them is, in my mind at least, another combat trick.
Yeah, it's a really expensive combat
Yeah.
trick.
Maybe we should stay away from Standard Pauper, or should we talk about Standard Pauper? Because this definitely has a spot in Standard Pauper.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into it too
Okay.
much, because if we go into Standard Pauper, you really have to go into the whole set,
Yep.
because...
True.
Yeah.
And you
Alright.
already did that on
What else you got,
Pauper to the
Dave?
People, right?
I did.
Okay, let's stick to
It
classic.
was long.
Anything
I'm not
else?
doing it again, man. Nah, like I said, I
Anything
felt
else?
so just, I don't know, and maybe it's a pessimistic view, but I felt mildly underwhelmed.
But isn't this the natural thing? There's like, how many cards in Pauper now? 4,000, 5, 6? And we got 200 new cards. There shouldn't be so much in a set for Classic Pauper.
Yeah. Usually you walk away from a new set with 2 if it's really good. Maybe a little more than that.
Yeah, Crow and Crusader, Commune with the Gods.
I like Omen Speaker.
And Omen Speaker.
I mean, I had kind of joked about the fact that we get Lightning Strike, which is Incinerate. What did I say? Number 3 or 4?
Yeah.
And it's like, even that, it's like, oh, hey, cool, we have yet another copy that we can run 4 of, but...
And Incinerate isn't even good enough to play in Burn.
Yeah, there's so many fantastic options at that 1 mana cost thing. I mean, it's again, that going back to the Feral Invocation, it's kind of the same thing that suffers from. It's interesting,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure it fits really well.
Say too many old cards do things that are much more powerful for the same converted mana.
Yeah, which is odd, because everyone always complains about power creep.
Yeah, well, it's power creep for the rares, is what people are
Yeah, I
complaining
guess
about.
so. I guess being in that all-common format, it's a different story.
Yeah, they're actually going different route with the power. I mean, they're going the opposite
Wait,
route.
so
power
you mean
creep
that
now.
people play cards that aren't common? Is that actually a thing?
Yeah.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Too expensive for my taste. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was just my general view, is that so many things were like, okay, this looks kind of cool, but there's things that are probably better at that same slot.
Yeah.
Actually, David's list had another 15-ish cards that he predicted 0 of, but he was willing to talk about them.
Yeah.
Anything interesting on that list, or?
No.
Gotcha.
I think it's something we're going to have to talk about maybe next week when we have more time. I do need to close this out, though, guys. So, Dan, how can we contact you?
You can reach me on Twitter at MagicGathStrat, or on YouTube at MagicGatheringStrat, or on mtgostrat.com.
Sweet. And Dave?
Twitter is the best place to find me. MTGO JustSin.
Yeah, that's all one word, right?
Yep.
MTGO just
All
in?
one word.
All right. I'm Chris. You can contact me on Twitter, too. My Twitter handle is at cweaver8518. You can also contact me on MTGO at my username there is just cweaver. I'm always down for playtesting, and I've done it with quite a few people now. So send me a message. Let me know what you want to play. I have pretty much all the Pauper decks, so... thank you guys for listening again. This is a very extended episode. The Bannings are really awesome for the format, and we hope you enjoy the new format. This has been CPC episode